Hi, I'm Laurie Dobson, and today is January 13th, 2021. So I'm going to talk today about the start of my path of becoming an activist, an actual activist in the political realm, and not just on the local level. I'd run for office in a small way, but I understood the importance of it back in 2011. But I didn't really understand the role that you play when you are a public servant and when you step into the limelight and you say what you believe in and you give a platform and you defend it and you talk to people about it and you understand what it is that you truly believe and what you're willing to put yourself on the line for. That happened for me when I started, when I said yes to running as a Democrat for the state rep position in 2002 in Connecticut, in Darien, Rowayton, and Norwalk. It was kind of an important position if I would have won it, because it was an area that had not had any Democrats win. So it was a Republican seat. It was 85% Republican, and nobody had even bothered to run. But I thought it was an important thing because the war was ramping up. My sister had died and she had 4 boys, and I didn't want them ending up going to Iraq. I didn't want my children going either. And so I said I would be willing to run, but I'd be an anti-war candidate. And that was my bottom line, because I didn't want this war. I had learned that there were some serious questions about it and about the things that we were told, which we were later found to have been we understood that we were lied to at the time, that there was no yellow cake uranium found in Niger, that was proven by Joseph Wilson, and he wrote about it and all of that. Louis Libby eventually went to jail because of that. So the issue was important because Colin Powell held up a vial at the UN and said that it was happening. He lied, and he knew that it was a lie, and he did it. And we went to war on a lie. No WMDs found. And so, as a result of that, it was understood that we were in an immoral war, a war that people lost their lives in. And that war just continued after Bush. It got extended into other areas. Obama continued the war and expanded the war. And to this day, we haven't pulled out of Afghanistan. And we understand that some of these wars are now considered perennial. The war on terror is considered not to be an ending war. And now we are not even thinking about it anymore. When we start new wars, such as in Yemen, we don't even declare it or even announce it as if it doesn't exist. Although there are so many horrific atrocities around the world that we've created, our country has created, and we seem blithely ignorant, and that seems to be our defense. But there is no defense, because nobody in this country that has paid any attention at all for the last 20 years does not understand that our country has been immoral, has behaved badly, corruptly, criminal actions and war criminality and war profiteering off of these things. It's disturbing how depraved that we have become as a people. Nevertheless, I thought that we could work with our system of government and make it better from the inside. We could stop these wars. We could do our best. And I've run for office on an anti-war platform ever since. In 2008 for the U.S. Senate, and then in 2016 I ran again as a Bernie candidate in Maine for the state rep position. And I've learned a lot talking to people, and I understand that in their hearts, they're patriotic. They're doing what they believe they must for their country, and they're willing to make sacrifices, big sacrifices, for the good of others. And I believe that's true. What people don't want anymore is the lies. And because we've had the ability to look things up for ourselves, we have an amazing ability, to understand things from different perspectives. We've learned how other people think and how other people feel in ways that are, in our own homes. We can research and think things through. So it depends on what we want out of the picture. If we want understanding, there's an increased means to be able to get there. That doesn't mean that people are willing to do that. We're very distracted. We've been distracted purposely from our efforts to try to understand each other. There is a very it's become difficult to find alternative viewpoints. And for example, with the March on the Capitol, it's been called an insurrection. It's been called a riot. It's been called, a takeover of the country, a coup. Even I think it must bewilder a lot of people who had gone to hear the president and were encouraged to walk around in a march, to find that they could just walk right into the Capitol and then to find out that they are Trump extremists, being told they're Trump extremists and being told that they need to be sidelined and destroyed. It's a zealotry in response to what people believe they want to think. People believe that what they saw on the outside is what was going on, because they see what they were told, and they're being told what to think when they see what they're shown, which does not seem to have any other kind of narrative going on. So if I were not understanding politics and the way things progress, and if I didn't understand the history and the intentions behind these things, I would assume, like many other people who just don't know what to think, that we did indeed suffer some sort of a severe effort to subvert and overtake the government by force, and that's what the intention was, to show us that. I think it's really unfortunate, but I think that when people gain an advantage, they like to keep pressing it, and they don't try to understand or balance it out with the needs of others. That it's an all or nothing, and I see it happening now. So what I want to say is that while this is going on, there are people who have not made their minds up about this because they don't have enough factual information. And I just want to acknowledge them for, like I've been trying to do myself, is just to get a sense of perspective. And so we can question what's going on and try to learn, and not to just allow easy explanations to answer for us. The New York Times had a Dr. Professor Timothy Snyder, who's written a book called, it's called American Abyss. Timothy Snyder. He was just on Democracy Now!, and he was there talking about how, I guess he was on the cover of the New York Times, and he was also on Democracy Now!, and they were talking about things from a point of view of the Trumpers and all of this. This 75 million people that voted for Trump are now being treated as though they have no mind, as though they're just horrible subhuman beasts, and that they're all the same. Everyone's the same. There's no ability to think. They're just basically treating them like the peasant class. I'm very concerned about this. It feels like it's a class war. It's the upper classes versus the lower classes. The effort is also been made to try to, and I've seen this across the internet, to treat people as though everybody is stupid. There was a PBS lawyer who was basically saying that Republicans, their children all need to go to re-education camps because they don't know how to think. And this kind of thinking, this way of thinking that people don't have a brain in their heads and therefore they voted for Trump, really does deny the reasons that drove people to Trump, the pressures that drove people to Trump over Hillary. And I understand it because I've taken the time to really understand the forces there, and also to understand the incredible selectivity with which I've been able to even get information about Trump based on my own interests, and how the internet kind of funnels me into these areas of sensibilities, that are I guess aligned with the Democratic Party and liberal thinking. But since I've gone through the Bernie thing, I understand a lot more about what that was all about, and how that was not what it seemed to be. I do believe at this point that Bernie was used to keep people in the Democratic Party, and he used methods that I feel were wrong. He convinced people that he would be a fair trader, that he would be who he purported to be, and not just do it as an exercise to try to encourage people back to the party that they were rejecting for good reason, because it wasn't representing them. So anyway, and also making Biden out to be somebody he is not, and trying to remold him to be somewhat of a respectable character, which most people understand is a dubious case to make. So while I've been trying to keep my own thinking kind of in the middle of not trying to get caught up in the zealotry and the hatred and the bigotry of both sides, not trying to instantly say this side's good, this side's bad. I just can't make those easy distinctions anymore, because these are people, well-intentioned people on both sides, but very far down their own ideological rabbit holes, and I really think that I've seen a loss of the ability to think and have perspective from Democrats now more than I've ever seen before. I think a lot of Republicans are coming into a headlong assault on their on moral grounds, on personal grounds, and I think are feeling justifiably persecuted, and are reacting out of a sense of wounded moral injury. And I think they have a case to make for that. So if anyone's going to get my sympathies now, it's not going to be the side of the people that are who see that they have the advantage on the field and that are running the ball down and trying, like AOC and the Squad and others, to demonize people and to further push them into ideological corners. People aren't going to give up their beliefs just because you're trying to silence them. You're not going to convince them that way. The age-old ways of working with people still work. The Treaty of Westphalia, which I was taught about when I worked with the LaRouche organization in my campaign to help understand the long-term principles of why politics and political action and a political effort is a worthwhile thing. I learned about a lot of things. It really opened my mind to the value of the efforts that I was trying to undertake in a small way. I really understood the value of looking at these things from a point of view of a historical perspective. And so the Treaty of Westphalia, which was something I learned about, was about the way that the European countries that were warring for 30 years, the way they came to peace was by adopting this treaty, which discussed how, which laid out the groundwork for how the peace could be a lasting peace, which it was. It was about how each country had to act for the betterment of the other, not just consideration of the other, but to actively act for the betterment and the welfare of the other, and to respect the sovereignty of each individual nation. It seems almost an impossibility to believe that we Americans could return to a state of goodness that represents. But maybe there's enough desperation now where some people with enlightened viewpoints can understand and recognize the need for a sublime response, to uplift mankind to a certain perspective, to where we can appreciate and direct the best method for getting people to work together to make the people prosper and to uplift them. And those were things I was ideas I was steeped in. And I didn't even know there was a German Renaissance where a lot of these ideas happened, that there were influences on the signers of the Declaration of Independence, and they pulled from a lot of different sources, a lot of different understandings about best methods that they learned from history, and they incorporated it into our Constitution. So it's really a document that stood the test of time because it's got these perspectives. It didn't just respond to King George bad. We are good. That's enough said. People back then were literate. 70% of people back then, were well read and were read. And what they chose to read were important pieces of work. They did not have a lot of fluff writing back then. They had Thomas Paine, who prompted them, in his common sense pamphlets, The Rights of Man and others, who was urging them to separate, and was, somebody who was trying to get people to act on their beliefs and on their principles. And I think that's a good thing for politicians to do. But when they have so much money and influence from corrupt places, when the money is just behind them, is motivated, to self-propagate at the expense of people, these are evil things. Citizens United, making money the condition upon which people can run, making it unlimited, the amount of money that can get thrown into these campaigns by wealthy corporations that have their own interests, shareholder value over the common good. And I learned all this. So going into my campaign back then, when I was demonized because I listened to people like LaRouche, that sense of demonization has stuck with me. So whenever I smell it, persecution, demonization, I don't think it had to be another life that I experienced that in. I've experienced that in this life. And it got extreme after my race. I was profiled in the papers as, as being as bad as they accused Lyndon LaRouche of being. People don't really, to this day, even know what that man did and who he was. But I think it's time for him to have some redemption. I think it's time to understand now that there's less active profiling of him by defamatory agents that I'm not even going to go into. But I believe that, they politically assassinated someone who would have been a beautiful example of statesmanship, a prime ideal candidate for president. Couldn't happen under those, they didn't want someone like him who really talked peace and could have, instituted the methods to carry out some of the goals that Kennedy had, being an FDR type of Democrat. And so I ran as an FDR Democrat, didn't really even at the time understand why it was important to say that, but I do now, because the effort of the Clintons to make the party, neo-lib centrist party, was to eviscerate the part of our heritage, our democratic heritage, that really held to the principles of the common good. So it's important to this day to understand that we aren't getting nearly enough information, background information, historical information, and we're going to have to do our own research. I'm really glad I got exposed to an organization that helped me know what my higher mission was on this planet politically. If I was to accept that role, then in a way you're agreeing to be a Joan of Arc. You're agreeing to be a person who will act for your country to the extent that you can, understanding the best that you can what that vision of your country is, and to fight for it. My father was in the military. He fought for what he believed in, and I was not content with his vision. I had to find out what I believed. And I'm really glad I had that chance. I had the people to support me doing that. And to this day, I'm supported by so many to continue having a voice and playing a part in this country I hope to continue to do so, and I still have so much to learn, but that can't stop me. So I appreciate those of you that have supported my efforts through these years, and there's been a lot of misunderstanding, but I feel I have prevailed because the principles that hold us together are stronger. They're based on love. They're stronger than the fear postures and freakouts that people are having right now. I see a lot of people just fizzling out and just trembling on TV, crying, journalists crying. They look like they're lost, and I think they are, because they're being told to foment hate and division when they must know in their hearts that the opposite must be true, that we must come together, we must refuse to be divided, we must find it in our hearts to understand each other. You know, that there's more together as Americans that unites us than divides us by any one term, any one, particular moment in history, any one moment or event that has been played and used to get us to believe certain things that allow us to think that we can then judge and condemn our fellow men and women. So let's not do that. Let's back off from these voices. Let's trust the ones that are speaking about ways to move forward, to work together and help each other by a willingness to understand and not to react and not to judge, not to call people subhuman, not to put laugh emoticons on everything instead of thinking, instead of understanding. Reacting is not intelligent. It's a bestial thing. It's a fight or flight. And we can do more than that. We can really understand when we're agitated or doubtful, pause, and then regroup. So this is a regroup kind of a moment, and I'm urging that for all of you. For your own peace of mind, take care. Bye.